Hello, everyone. I thought today would be interesting to talk about governing authority, what the Bible has to say about it, at least in one place, and how that applies to the United States. So, this is the ESV website. I'm going to have links down in the description. But this is the ESV website. I like it, it's pretty useful. Don't mind the ad on the side there. But let's look at Romans chapter 13. This is a very famous passage, and I think gets misunderstood or misapplied, but I'm going to try to explain how I understand it. It starts out, "Let every person be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and those that exist have been instituted by God." Great. That tells us that every governing authority that exists on earth has been instituted by God. This is not an endorsement of any particular form of human government. It is merely saying that human government exists because God put it there. That there's any governing authority at all is because God has instituted it. And He's instituted it for a particular purpose. Therefore, whoever resists the authorities resists what God has appointed, and those who resist will incur judgment. Continuing on, "For rulers are not a terror to good conduct, but to bad. Would you have no fear of the one who is in authority? Then do what is good, and you will receive his approval. For he is God's servant for your good. If you do wrong, be afraid, for he does not bear the sword in vain, for he is the servant of God, an avenger, who carries out God's wrath on the wrongdoer." Okay, that tells me that there is a very clear purpose there. And I think it is to punish sin, and it is to reward good. It's not there for whoever wields authority to do whatever they please. They have a very clear-cut purpose. And we have a very clear response. We're not to resist when they're doing what God has instituted their authority for, right? It doesn't mean that your government gets to do whatever it wants, that the people who are in government, they can't just do anything that they want. They have a very clear purpose. They have strict guidelines that they have, not guidelines, rules they have to follow. And I think that's very important. So, where I live, during COVID, my governor said that even people in churches had to wear masks at all times. And the impact this had was we couldn't sing. I'm a musician, and I can't sing with a mask on. And so the praise team that I was a part of, we temporarily disbanded because there was nothing for us to do. Can't sing with masks on. It's ridiculous. And so worship through music was temporarily suspended at my church that I was going to at the time. I left that church mainly because the church was saying, "Oh no, we have to blindly obey our governor who tells us what to do." And there was this belief that any particular whim that our governor comes up with, we had to follow. And that's just not the case. And that's a real problem. I disagreed with the pastor. I didn't come face to face with him. I just chose to leave. But he never asked where I went anyway. So it was kind of a disappointing relationship all around. But anyway, suffice to say, Romans 13 is not a blank check for governments to do anything that they want, or to just make up laws that are unjust, or rules or edicts or proclamations or whatever you want to call them. Anyway, let's continue on. Therefore one must be in subjection. This is verse 5. Therefore, one must be in subjection, not only to avoid God's wrath, but also for the sake of conscience. For because of this, you also pay taxes, for the authorities are ministers of God, attending to this very thing. Pay all what is owed to them. Taxes to whom taxes are owed, revenue to whom revenue is owed, respect to whom respect is owed, honor to whom honor is owed. Well, that's fine. Don't have a problem with that at all. Now, but here's the big question. Who are the governing authorities in the United States? This is where I see a pretty big disconnect or fundamental misunderstanding in some of the discussions online surrounding Christian nationalism, theonomy, and those kinds of things, right? So the people in those camps, I think they're sincere. I just disagree with them. I think they fundamentally misunderstand this point, and I think a lot of Americans do. Where is the governing authority? Who is that vested in the United States? Well, we have to go to the Constitution. Okay, now remember, the Constitution is not Scripture, but it is the framework by which our country functions. It's supposed to function, right, on paper or on the screen. This is the National Archives website. It's the text of the Constitution. First three words, we the people. Oh, okay. Where is the authority vested to govern in the United States? It is in the people. We the people of the United States. Right there. It's right in the preamble. In order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States. This is also not a transfer of authority from the people to those who are in office, to civil officers. This is a statement of, this is our country, and we are establishing these offices to be temporarily filled at our discretion to fill these particular roles. These are civil servants who serve the public good. They serve the people. Authority, as instituted by God in the United States, is from the bottom up. It is not at any time from the top down. Even if a legislature says to their governor, we give you all of our legislative authority to do as you will for this emergency of COVID or whatever, for this time, do whatever you want, and tell us when we can come back and meet again, as happened in my state. It's not that. This is not what the Constitution is saying. The Constitution is saying the people decide what happens in the country, and that everyone who is in office serves at the pleasure of the people. Now, a stronger statement, actually, of the people being the governing authority is in the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as they shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. All right, that's saying the United States here, we exist because of the consent of the governed, not the whim of the person who temporarily serves an office for the good of the people. Where does this authority vested in we the people even come from? It comes from God. We're told right here, let every person be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and those that exist have been instituted by God. Therefore, whoever resists the authorities resists what God has appointed, and those who resist will incur judgment. All right, so it means that in the United States, we temporarily hire these civil servants to serve the public good. Yes, some of them have the force of law behind them, like police officers and executive branches, and legislative branches can create new laws. That's true, but that's because the people have temporarily hired them to fill that role, because it's just too unwieldy for all 330 million plus of us to do that every day. Now, but that this resisting the authorities also applies to the civil officers. They don't get to do whatever they want in violation of the standing laws that we have. And I think that's pretty clear. Now, remember, this is not an endorsement of any kind of human government. It's not saying that one type of human government is better than another. It's saying that human government exists to punish evil, to promote good. I don't see anywhere in the Bible that any particular form of human government is endorsed. It doesn't get a blank check endorsement from God. I wouldn't say that God endorses the kind of government that we have in the United States. It just simply is a fact that he established it. Now, that being said, does the Bible speak against any particular form of human government? I would say most certainly it does. I would say it very plainly does in 1 Samuel. 1 Samuel chapter 8, we have Samuel the prophet. He's leading Israel. And what happens is the people come to him and say, hey, you're getting really old. And you've got these sons. They don't do what you do. They don't walk in your ways. And so we want a king, just like all the people around us. And we want you to give us a king. And this is tough for Samuel. But God speaks to him in verse 7 of chapter 8. And the Lord said to Samuel, obey the voice of the people in all that they say to you. For they have not rejected you, but they have rejected me from being king over them. According to all the deeds that they have done from the day I brought them out of Egypt, even to this day, forsaking me and serving other gods, so they are also doing to you. Now then, obey their voice. Only you shall solemnly warn them, and show them the ways of the king who shall reign over them. And they get the king, right? They get a king, and right here in this section, verses 10 through 18, Samuel warns them very plainly. And I think he's making it pretty clear, you don't want a king. You're going to hate it. He's going to do whatever he wants, and you're going to absolutely hate it. And you'll cry out because of the king. And God's not going to answer you. I think what this is saying is that we shouldn't have human kings, because God is king. And I think that Israel got a line of kings out of judgment. And certainly God used the office of king in Israel to point to Christ. Of course, we know that. We know that David fills that kind of type. He's a type and shadow. He points the way to Jesus. But no human king can fill this role. It's just beyond any human being to do this. It's just too much authority, and the temptation for evil is too great. If we read 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles, how did having a human king work out for Israel? Not too good, right? So I think that the Bible rejects human monarchy, and I'm being very clear saying human monarchy. It rejects that. The only monarchy that the Bible promotes is God's rightful place as our king. And that's Jesus Christ. His reward for his death, burial, and resurrection. His death for our sins. His reward is to have all authority that exists in heaven and on earth. That's pretty awesome. Jesus Christ is king. right? And I think that's just so awesome. All right, I just think that was a needful thing just to look at this. I needed to get my thoughts out. Um, this is more like a journal in this case than a real regular video. I'm just trying to talk through what it is I believe about the governing authorities and how that applies to the United States. All right, everyone. Hope you have a great day.